A woman sits alone on a dying plane. Both engines stop at 30,000 feet. She stands up and says, "I used to fly for the Air Force." She was lost in a plane crash 7 years ago, believed dead. Now, F-22 jets hear her call sign over the radio, "Survivor." Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Flight 2289 left the ground at 9 in the morning under a clear blue sky. 218 passengers sat in their seats, some sleeping, some reading, some talking about small things like lunch plans and weekend trips. Captain Daniel Cole was flying the plane with his co-pilot, Rachel Adams, sitting beside him. Everything felt normal. Then, at 31,000 feet, the plane flew straight into a large flock of birds. The impact was sudden and loud. Both engines took in birds at almost the same moment. Within seconds, the engines lost power. The cockpit went quiet in a strange way, the kind of quiet that only comes when something has gone very wrong. Captain Cole checked his instruments and felt his chest tighten. Both engines were dead. The plane was now a glider, falling slowly through the sky with no power to push it forward. Rachel called the nearest control tower. "Center, this is Flight 2289. We have lost both engines. We are declaring an emergency." The controller on the ground answered quickly, but the news was not good. The nearest airport was too far away. The mountains below were tall and rough, with no flat land in sight. Captain Cole looked at Rachel and both of them understood the truth without saying it out loud. They did not have a safe place to land. Inside the cabin, passengers began to feel the plane shake and dip. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, trying to keep people calm, but fear spreads fast on a plane with no power. Phones came out. Some people cried quietly. Some held hands with strangers next to them. A young flight attendant named Olivia walked down the aisle, checking on people, when she noticed a woman sitting alone near the back. The woman was calm in a way that did not match the moment. She was watching the wings of the plane, not the panicking. The woman stood up. She wore simple clothes, nothing that suggested anything special about her, but her eyes were focused and steady. She walked toward Olivia. "I used to fly for the Air Force," she said. "I need to speak to the captain right now." Olivia hesitated for a second, then saw something in the woman's face that made her believe her. She led the woman to the cockpit door and knocked twice, the signal for an emergency. Captain Cole opened the door just enough to look out. "We have a passenger who says she is a former Air Force pilot," Olivia said quickly. The woman stepped forward. "I flew heavy transport planes for 10 years. I know how to handle dead engines. Let me help you." Captain Cole looked at Rachel, then back at the woman. There was no time to argue. He opened the door fully and let her in. The woman sat in the jump seat behind the pilots and put on a spare headset. She looked at the instruments, the altitude, the dead engine gauges, and the map showing nothing but mountains below. "You will not make it to the nearest airport," she said. "We need another plan." She reached for the radio. "Center, this is Flight 2289. A trained pilot has joined the cockpit to assist. Requesting immediate support." The controller on the ground asked for her name and call sign so they could confirm her identity. The woman paused for a long moment before answering. "Call sign, Survivor." The room on the ground went silent. An Air Force officer nearby, a woman named Colonel Grant, heard the name over the radio and stood up fast. She knew that call sign. It had belonged to a pilot who disappeared 7 years earlier in a small plane crash in the mountains, a pilot who was declared dead after months of searching found nothing but wreckage. Colonel Grant ordered 2 F-22 jets to fly toward Flight 2289 immediately, both to check on the passenger plane and to confirm who was really speaking on the radio. The jets reached the airliner within minutes and flew close beside it. "Flight 2289, this is Falcon 1. We have you in sight. Please confirm the name of the pilot assisting you. The woman spoke again, steady and calm. This is Captain Emily Hart. Call sign survivor. On the ground, Colonel Grant felt her hands shake. Emily Hart was her old friend, a pilot everyone had mourned and buried in an empty grave 7 years before. Back in the cockpit, Captain Cole asked the question everyone was thinking. You were the pilot who disappeared years ago. Everyone said you died. Emily did not look away from the windshield. I know what they said. Right now, that does not matter. What matters is landing this plane. She began running numbers in her head, thinking about weight, wind, and how far the plane could glide without power. The mountains stretched out below like a wall of stone, but far ahead she noticed a long straight road cutting through a valley. There, she said, pointing. That road can work as a runway if we can reach it. Captain Cole studied the distance. That is over 60 miles away. Can this plane glide that far? Emily did the math again. Maybe. If we keep the perfect glide speed and the wind stays with us, we have a chance. If not, we will not make it. She did not soften the truth, because she believed the crew deserved to know exactly what they were facing. While Emily worked the controls, her mind slipped back to the crash that had changed her life. 7 years earlier, she had been flying a small plane with her husband, Mark, and their young daughter, Lily, on a short trip over the mountains. The engine failed without warning. There was no time to reach any airport. The plane went down hard in a remote forest. Mark was killed instantly. Emily broke her arm and several ribs, but she survived. Lily survived the crash too, but she was badly hurt and the cold weather in the mountains was dangerous. For 3 days, Emily kept her daughter alive in the wreckage, wrapping her in anything warm she could find, telling her stories to keep her awake, promising her that help was coming. But the emergency beacon on the plane had been destroyed in the crash, and no one knew where they were. On the 3rd night, Lily's small body could not fight the cold anymore. She asked her mother one last question before she closed her eyes. Will you keep flying, Mommy? Emily promised her that she would. She did not wake up again. When rescuers finally found the wreckage days later, they found Emily alive but alone. Mark and Lily were both gone. Emily attended their funeral in silence, standing far from the crowd, unable to accept comfort from anyone. The weight of losing her husband and her daughter at the same time was more than she could carry while people watched her grieve. So she made a hard decision. She changed her name, moved to a new city, and let the world believe that Captain Emily Hart had died along with her family in that crash. She stopped flying completely, breaking the promise she made to her daughter, because she could not sit in a cockpit without seeing her face. Back in the present, at 20,000 feet, Emily blinked and returned her focus to the dying plane around her. She adjusted the controls slightly, trading a little height for a little more distance, trying to stretch the glide as far as it could go. Rachel watched her hands move with confidence. You still remember everything, Rachel said quietly. Some things do not leave you, Emily answered. The radio crackled again. It was Colonel Grant, her old friend, speaking directly now. Emily, is that really you? We searched for months. We thought we buried you. Emily's voice stayed calm even though her chest felt tight. It's me, Jess. I will explain everything later. Right now, help me get these people down safely. Colonel Grant swallowed her shock and switched back into her role as an officer. Falcon 1 and Falcon 2 are with you. Tell us what you need. I need that road cleared, Emily said. There will be cars on it. Get them off before we arrive. The 2 F-22 jets dropped low and flew fast over the road ahead, the sound of their engines warning drivers below. Cars pulled over in confusion, then panic, as people looked up and saw a large passenger plane gliding silently toward them with no engine sound at all. Within 2 minutes, the road was mostly clear. Inside the cabin, passengers had been told to prepare for a hard landing. Many held hands, some prayed quietly, and a few cried without trying to hide it. A man near the front turned to his wife and said something everyone in the plane was likely thinking. "Whatever happens, I am glad we are alive right now." Emily could hear parts of this through the intercom system, and it pushed her to focus even harder on her calculations. At 10,000 feet, Emily called for the flaps to be extended by hand since hydraulic power was low. At 6,000 feet, she called for the landing gear to drop, and it fell into place slowly under its own weight, locking with 3 green lights on the panel. At 2,000 feet, the road filled the front window, narrow and lined with guardrails, far too tight for comfort but the only option they had. "Brace for landing," Emily said into the intercom, and Olivia repeated the words through the cabin speakers. The wheels touched the road hard, screaming against the surface as Emily pressed the brakes as far as they would go. The plane shook violently, sliding down the road while Captain Cole and Rachel worked the pedals to keep it centered between the guardrails. Smoke rose from the brakes. The plane slowed from speed to a crawl and finally came to a complete stop just a short distance from a parked truck that had not moved off the road in time. For a moment, nobody in the plane made a sound. Then the cabin erupted with cries of relief and disbelief. 218 people who thought they were going to die were alive. In the cockpit, Emily sat still with her hands on the controls, her whole body finally shaking now that the danger had passed. Captain Cole looked at her with deep respect. "You just saved all of us," he said. Emily could only nod, tears finally falling as the weight of 7 years came rushing back to her all at once. The news spread within the hour. A video taken from a car on the road showed the plane gliding down and landing safely, and it was shared everywhere online. Reporters searched for the identity of the mystery pilot, and soon the story broke completely. Captain Emily Hart, believed dead for 7 years, had appeared out of nowhere to save a plane full of strangers. Emily was taken to the hospital for a checkup, and it was there that Colonel Grant came to see her in person for the first time in 7 years. The two women sat quietly for a long while before either spoke. "Why did you disappear?" Colonel Grant finally asked. "I could not be the woman everyone knew," Emily said. "The woman who lost her husband and her daughter. I could not live with people looking at me with pity every day. So I became someone else, someone who could keep going without answering questions about my family." Colonel Grant took her hand. "You do not have to explain that to me. But the world knows who you are now. There will be questions, maybe even legal trouble, for using a false name for so long." Emily nodded slowly. "I know. But I do not regret coming forward. Those people deserved a chance to live, and I could give them that." In the weeks that followed, Emily faced questioning from authorities about her false identity. Many expected harsh punishment, but the passengers of Flight 2289 stood by her side. Dozens of them came forward publicly, saying that whatever mistakes she made in her grief, she had saved their lives when it mattered most. A young lawyer took her case for free, arguing that 7 years of hidden grief was already its own kind of punishment. In the end, the authorities decided not to press serious charges, understanding that her intention was never to harm anyone, only to survive her own pain. After everything settled, Emily returned to the small mountain town where her husband and daughter were buried. She stood at the grave for the first time in 7 years, kneeling in the grass beside the small stone with her daughter's name carved into it. "I kept my promise, Lily," she whispered. "I flew again, and I saved people because of it. I am sorry it took me so long." The wind moved gently through the trees above her, and for the first time in years, Emily felt like she could breathe without the weight crushing her chest. The Air Force later asked Emily to return, not as an active pilot, but as a trainer for new pilots learning to handle emergencies. She accepted, believing that if her story could help even one young pilot survive a crisis someday, then her pain would not be wasted. She began teaching young cadets about engine failures, emergency landings, and the importance of staying calm when everything goes wrong. She always ended her lessons the same way. Survivor does not mean you came out unharmed. It means you carry the people you lost with you, and you keep going anyway. Colonel Grant often visited the training sessions, watching her old friend teach with a steady voice and clear eyes. One evening after class, she asked Emily how she was really doing. Emily thought about it for a moment before answering. "I still think of them every day. But now the pain has a purpose. Before, it only had weight." She smiled slightly, something rare for her in the years since the crash. "I think Lily would be proud that I kept flying." Word of Emily's story spread through pilot training programs across the country, inspiring many young pilots to keep going even after facing failure or fear in the cockpit. Letters came in from strangers thanking her for her honesty, for showing that a person could break completely and still find a way back. Emily read each letter carefully, keeping them in a small box next to her daughter's photo. A year after the crash landing, Emily stood in front of a new group of students on their first day of emergency training. She looked out at their nervous faces and remembered her own nervous face many years ago before her first flight. "My name is Captain Emily Hart," she said. "My call sign is Survivor. I want to tell you about the worst day of my life, and how it led me here to teach you." The students leaned forward to listen, and Emily began to share her story once more, keeping the promise she had made in the snow so many years before.